Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Dynamic Dialogue. This week, we're in the week of August 17th. Today is the 18th, and today we're going to talk about some skills that you get either from certifications or degrees. So we're going to look at supply chain professionals and how these stack up and what might be right for you. So this is weekly dynamic dialogue webinars. They're open to anyone. We're open to supply chain professionals interested in supply chain activities. During the COVID pandemic, before, during, after, all of the above, we do a short presentation, then we have open it up for questions, comments, or whatever. You can use the chat room. We keep it to an hour. This link is good for all of August, and then I don't know if we'll get a new link in September or not, but I'll send it out the day of the event, so you'll have those. So welcome everyone to today's session. Today we're going to talk about certifications versus degrees. There's really three types of learning opportunities that you can pursue. You can look at college degrees, and we'll talk a little bit about those. There are thousands of colleges across the nation. There are probably over 100 here in the Los Angeles area, and many of those are in person, but now there are so many online universities and colleges that you can attend. It seems like every time I turn on the TV, there's another one advertising. So whether it's the Grand Canyon or in Denver or the University of New Hampshire, I think I saw over the weekend. So you can go to any of these schools and you can go there virtually online. Many of them offer four-year programs, a Bachelor of Arts, a Bachelor of Science. There are two-year programs that you can go to for college degrees. Those are usually junior colleges or community colleges, and they will give you an Associate of Arts degree. You can get various and sundry degrees from that. And then there are postgraduate degrees, a Master of Arts, a Master of Science, or an MBA. So all of those are available. Then there are a number of certifications, and we'll take a look at these different types of certifications that are fairly common in the supply chain world. You can get these through several organizations. We're going to look at 4 different organizations today that are some of the more popular, more recognized organizations. All of these require some kind of proctored exam. Before COVID, many of them used testing centers. Some of them had scheduled times where you had to take the test in this week at these locations. Others had worked with local testing centers or national testing centers that had places locally that you could come and take these different exams. They knew they had the exam, they would queue it up for you, you take it online, they know exactly how long you have and what the stipulations are in terms of having scratch paper, open book, whatever. So they have proctored exams, they have fees that you have to pay with the application for the exam, and then after you pass the exam for the certification. And then there are renewal fees too. These are certifications that you attain, but in order to maintain those, you have to renew them periodically. And we'll look at some of the detail there. There's a lot of different fees for these. The study materials can range from about $500 to $1,500 and more. These are with member discounts. Without the member discounts, you can add probably $200 to $300 on those numbers. Exam fees range from about $200 to more than that. Exam fees can be as much as $600 or $700 each for each exam. And then with the discount, that's in there. And then if you don't have the discount, then it's, again, about $200 to $400 more. There's application fees for actually submitting all of the paperwork and all of the requirements after you've passed the exam, because there are more requirements than just the exam. Those are in the range of $150 to about $300. And then renewal fees that you'll have to budget for. Those are from anywhere from about $75 to $150. These are with member discounts, and that is for the renewal period. So if it's every 3 years, it's that. If it's every 5 years, it's that number. Most require some kind of continuation of study and tracking that so that you are keeping up with the profession. That's the whole idea, is that You get the certification, but you are required in order to maintain that certification to demonstrate that you are still keeping up with what's going on in the industry, in the profession. And then there are certificates, which are different from certifications. Certificates are issued from a lot of different sources. You can get them from colleges, you can get them from professional organizations. Your own company may give you certificates for completing a certain type of training. You can get that for learning a new software. You can get that for an ethics training, a code of conduct that you might have to do. There can be any number of those that you can get. Those are usually issued upon completion of a course or a set of courses. They may or may not involve examinations or testing. It may just be that, yes, you completed that and here is your certificate. They're typically a one-time event. There's no renewals. There's no maintaining that. And college degrees are the same way. Once you get the college degree, you don't have to maintain that. You have that degree, you've attained that, you get your diploma, and then you just go on and do whatever you want to do with or without that diploma in your career. So we're going to look at some certifications first. Here's some of the organizations that typically award and are interested in completing and in instructing and issuing supply chain certifications. Some of these I'm very familiar with, some I'm not so much, but one I am pretty familiar with is the Institute for Supply Management. If you look at my name on things, I have letters after that, and those are from ISM, and we'll talk about those in a minute. So the Institute for Supply Management, that's located it's an international organization. Its headquarters are in Phoenix, and they've been around for over 100 years with different names. Institute for Supply Management is very purchasing oriented. A lot of these organizations now call themselves supply chain or supply, but they may have had their roots in different aspects of that, which I'll discuss and let you know about. So the Institute for Supply Management at one time was the National Association of Purchasing Managers, NAPM, and I believe it had a name before that that was about purchasing. So it has its roots firmly in purchasing and procurement. Association for Supply Chain Management, ASCM, and is also the same as Association of Product and Inventory, APIX, Inventory Control is what that is. So it used to be APIX and it was known as that. A few years ago, they were acquired by the Association for Supply Chain Management. They still operate with the APIX in local chapters, but the parent organization is ASCM. So they use a lot of different certifications, and we'll look at those. There is the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals, CSCMP. Oh, I forgot to say the APIX has its roots in production and operation. So in production control, inventory management, demand and supply, a lot of that is where that started, and that was about production and inventory controls, the PICS. Supply Chain Management Professionals, the Council, CSCMP, they have their roots in transportation and logistics. So not too long ago, they were the, I think, National Organization of Transportation Managers. So they have their roots firmly in logistics, and a lot of people that belong to that are in the logistics profession. That doesn't mean that you can't join any of these or multiples of these, but they do have their roots in different areas. The fourth one I'm going to mention today is the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, CIPS. CIPS is an organization that is very, very strong and very, very popular outside the United States. They do have a presence in the United States, and they are looking to grow that. They would like to be more visible and more active in the United States, but if you go and do a lot of business overseas, whether it's in Europe, where their headquarters are, or in Asia, the CIPS certifications and the CIPS organizations are much more prevalent and much more available than some of the other organizations, even though the other three all have a global presence. There's a lot of other organizations, and if you're looking for one, you need to match the organization with your interest, your particular needs, and your particular skills. Again, there is no law that says you can't join more than one. These are volunteer organizations, and so usually they want you to work with them and participate. So depending on how big your bandwidth is, you can do that, or you can focus on one. But these organizations in past years were a little more competitive. These days, they're very much, they're not working together, they're not competing, and they're very much just promoting the idea of being in a professional organization, promoting the profession of supply chain management, and really encouraging people to belong to one and to support one, because there's a lot of value in that. There's a lot of value for the organization, and there's a lot of value for individuals. And we'll look a little bit about that through the rest of the presentation. So ISM has several different things, and I'm just going to put all this up here. The first one I'm going to talk about today is the CPSM, which is a Certified Professional in Supply Management. In order to get that, you need to pass 3 exams. Exam 1 has 180 questions, and you're allowed 3 hours to take the test. The other 2 exams have 165 questions each, and you're allowed 2 hours and 45 minutes. So it's a minute per question. To get a CPSM, not only do you have to pass all 3 exams, and you can take those in any order. So there's exam 1, 2, and 3, but if you decide to take exam 1 first, that's fine. Then you have to have a bachelor's degree and 3 years of experience. So if you have a bachelor's degree in just about anything, plus 3 years of experience, and they want that 3 years of experience in professional, non-clerical type work. So supply chain work. So they will look at that and make sure that you have a statement from an HR person or someone in a company that you've worked for to attest that you have those 3 years of experience, or you'll need to demonstrate that you have those 3 years of experience in a job that it qualifies for that. And if you don't have a bachelor's degree, then you can have 5 years of experience. Again, you'll need someone to vouch for that. The CPSM renews every 3 years. In between, you need 20 continuing education hours, as they refer to them, 20 education hours per year. And that is, again, attending webinars, doing seminars. You can get them from writing. You can get them from writing articles. You can get them from teaching in your own company or outside your company. You can get them from attending webinars, seminars. You can get them from being on the board for a local chapter. So there's many different ways to get those. The CPSD is the Certified Professional in Supplier Diversity. That requires 2 exams, but one exam is in common with the CPSM. So if you have a CPSM, you only need to take 1 additional exam. If you don't have a CPSM, you'll have to take both of the exams, again, in any order, the exam 1 of the CPSM, and then the exam targeted toward supplier diversity. You need a bachelor's degree and 3 years experience, or 5 years of experience with no bachelor's degree, and then it's the same process. It renews every 3 years and 20 continuing education hours. These 2 go hand in hand, and like many of the other organizations we'll look at, these continuing education hours can be used for both certifications. I happen to hold both of these certifications, and if I have 20 hours a year, my 60 hours, I can use that for both the CPSM and the CPSD. It has to be within the 3-year period of that certification. So if I, for example, I renewed one in April of this year, so I have until April of 2023 to get those 60 hours. I can get them all in 1 month if I chose to do that, or I could get them one or 2 a month for whatever. And there's, as I said, there's a lot of ways to get that. So, and those same ones, even though my CPSD is a different timing, that whatever I use that's in that 3 years is applicable to both. So you don't have to have double the education hours. ISM is very well known for a CPM, which is a Certified Purchasing Manager. This is an exam, a certification that they had done for a number of years, but they no longer offer it. It's interesting, they haven't offered it since about 2008 or 9, maybe 10 at the latest, so at least 10 years. And yet when I see several job postings, I will see CPM preferred. So they don't hand that out anymore. They don't, you can't acquire that. But if you did, you can maintain that. So some of those are lifetime members, but if you got a CPM, say in 2005, you can maintain that by renewing it every 5 years with 84 CEH totals. So in that case, you don't need exactly 20 a year. It's a little less than that, 84 credits over those 5 years. And it's typically one continuing education hour for every hour that you're in class or in a webinar. If you go to an all-day workshop and it's an 8-hour workshop and you get a half hour for lunch, you could probably get 7.5 hours of credit for that. Typically it's 7 to 7.5 hours because they give you some breaks in there and whatever. So they will tell you ahead of time what is available with those workshops. And if they're not ISM workshops, then you just can track that yourself. So you want to maintain that. So those are part of this ISM. Then here's some more ISM information. They have a CPM lifetime. That means you can get that if you had 18 years of full-time professional supply management experience. So it has to be full-time. And again, you're going to need somebody to attest to that, an HR professional in the company you work for, a manager, senior manager, someone to write a letter to validate that. If you've had multiple jobs, you might have to have multiple people to attest to that. So you want to think about that when you have your network. You earn the CEHs through the year in which you meet the lifetime requirements. You have to have that, and then you no longer have to do the renewals every 5 years, which means you don't have to pay the money and you don't have to keep up your credentials with continuing to take webinars, workshops. The APP is no longer offered, and what that stands for escapes me at this second. But that was a certification offered several years ago. It still is, you can't get one today, but you can maintain that. It again renews every 5 years with 42 continuing education hours. And after 18 years, you can get a lifetime certification of that. For the CPSM and CPSD, there is no lifetime membership offered. They have done this because they say that the profession is changing all the time. And so even after 18 years, you're not allowed to get a lifetime one. I guess when you retire, you can let it lapse and then not have to worry about it. My friend and I joke that we'll be 90 years old and saying, hey, did you see any webinars? Can we get another couple of hours for our CEHs to maintain this thing? So I don't know how that's going to work, but right now there's no lifetime offered. CEHs you can earn, as I spoke earlier, but you can also get them through college courses you take or teach, any kind of continuing education, contributions to the profession, which are really board members, local chapters, volunteerism to those kinds of things, and then any kinds of additional exams. So for example, if you have a CPSM and you want to get your CPSD, for taking and passing that exam, you can get up to 20 hours of credit, and it varies from different certifications. But you could also get credit for earning an APIC certification or any other of the ones I'm going to talk about today. They do have a grace period where you have the certification is good for 3 years. You have a 1-year grace period to reapply for certification. If you don't recertify within that year, and most of these organizations do the same thing, you lose your certification, and in order to get it back, you'd have to repeat those 3 exams in the case of the CPSM. So you don't, once you get it, you don't want to lose it. And most of these are the same. If you don't maintain it for some reason, they have a grace period. It's usually a year, and you want to maintain that. So ASCM APICs, these have 3 different types of certifications: the CPIM, the CSCP, and CLTD. CPIM means you're certified in production and inventory management. So there's one exam, it's 150 questions, you get up to 3.5 hours. You have to, you want to pass 2 exams within 3 years to get this. And then it renews every 5 years with 75 professional development points. And I'm thinking I typed that incorrectly. The CSCP is a certified supply chain professional. There's 1 exam for that. It renews every 5 years with, again, 75 professional development points. 150 questions on that exam, 3.5 hours. And then you can be certified in logistics, transportation, and distribution. Pass 1 exam, renews every 5 years. So those 3 exams are pretty similar, and they renew every 5 years with what amounts to be about 15 development points. So APICS, ASCM calls them professional development points, but it's pretty much the same way. It's about an hour per point for attending different things. And there's a long list on APICS website that will tell you what types of things that you can take, because they do honor a lot of different kinds of training and continuing education. You do get points for being a member and points for being on the board. And so there's a lot of ways to get that. And then the score is a model that you can use that's sponsored by APICS. There's books on that. It's a good model for managing supply chains. Then there's also a -F, which stands for fellow. So these are similar in acquiring these, but they require 100 professional development points for every 5 years. So when it renews after 5 years, you do have to have the 20 a year to be a CPIMF. So that's another variation of that. You can get lifetime certification with these programs. You have to be at least 62 years old with a current valid certification. You can convert that to lifetime, which means, again, no more tracking points, no more maintaining that, no more paying. And the conversion is free at this point. The score is a model that you have access to that you can use in your workplace. Previously, they had a certification for transportation and logistics. This anything earned prior to January 2016 was converted to a lifetime certification of a CTL, and there's no expiration on that. And the PLS, the professional and logistics and supply management, is the same. So in 2016, they discontinued those. They converted everyone who had those active to lifetime members of those. And so if you see those certifications, they were acquired before 2016. And you never have to say when these were acquired, but they often do ask when it expires. Both APICS and ISM have a function on the website where you can actually go in and validate credentials. So if someone tells you they are a CPM, a CPIM, a CPSM or whatever, you can go in, put their name in there, and then it will tell you if they have that, if it's active, when it expires. They don't tell you when it was obtained, but for instance, mine that I renewed this year, it would tell you that I have both a CPSM and a CPSD. My CPSM expires in 2023 and my CPSD, I think, is in 2022, and we'll give you the month for that. So you can validate. And it's interesting that I've had people apply for jobs in my previous experience as a manager, and they told me they were a CPM or CPIM or whatever, and I went to the website and checked, and it wasn't valid. So you don't put it on there if it's not something that you can actually back up. CSCMP, again, this is the one with its background in transportation and logistics. They have different exams. They have what they call a supply chain pro, level 1, level 2, and they have a level 3. Level 1 and level 2, you need questions and you need to take exams for that. So the level 1 has 160 questions. It's 4 hours. You need a 4-year degree from an accredited university or 4 years of supply chain experience. You don't need both. You have to pass the 1 exam. This renews every 2 years, and you need 25 hours of professional development. The level 2, you pass one exam. I think it's the same 160 questions with 3 hours and 45 minutes. You pass one exam. In this case, you need a 4-year degree and 3 years of experience. Or if you have no degree, you need 7 years of supply chain experience. It renews every other year, every 2 years, and again, 25 hours of professional development. Then they have a level 3. This is a unique certification because this one is based on a project. So this, you need to have level 1 and level 2 certifications that are valid. You need to have a 4-year degree and 5 years experience, or without the degree, you need 9 years of experience, and you have to complete a project. So this is the only certification I've seen that doesn't require, for this particular one, an exam. You do have to pass the previous 2 exams in order to attain this. And then SIPS has what they call qualifications, and they have 5 levels of these qualification courses. The first one is not number 1, it's number 2, and it's a certificate in procurement and supply operations. The next one is an advanced certificate in procurement and supply operations. Then you get a diploma in procurement and supply, an advanced diploma in procurement and supply, and then a professional diploma in procurement and supply. So I didn't quite figure out the number of questions and the time allowed for exams, but SIPS is just moving to computer-based testing. So up until very recently, what they had was you had to go take it during this particular week. They would advertise when the testing was available. You would go to that location in that week and take the test. And then it would take, they said it would take weeks to get your exam score back. It would take 3 weeks or 5 weeks or something like that. The other exams, you know immediately after you take them at the testing center whether you passed or not. None of these organizations will give you the questions, but most of them will tell you the areas that you missed the most questions in. So they will give you some hints to study. So there's a lot of different certifications that you can get in a lot of different areas. And then there are certificates. So many of these are available locally. There's a very good extension program through UCLA that has supply chain extension. And then California State Dominguez Hills has, through their extension program, has a supply chain certification, a couple of them. So you can look those up online. You can go to those. They have a series of, it's 4 to about 7 or 8 different courses that you have to take. And they're anywhere from about 6 weeks to 12-week courses. And you take those courses. Again, most of them do not require a set order for that. You can do those. There's usually an intro class, and then after that, you can kind of take them in any order. And once you complete all of those, then you will get issued the certificate. So you will get a certificate of completion on that. Most of these are usually a year or less to complete. They have, again, several modules or courses that you need to take. And most of these are available, that are available locally, are online format. They offer lectures that are taped. I actually taught at Dominguez Hills a few times, and I would go on live. Sometimes I would have a couple of people on. I had one class where I only had one person who came live. So I had several people that I never actually met. They would listen to my lectures that I would record every week, and they would take the tests and do the homework, and I never saw them, never had any interaction other than grading their homework or their tests. So it was an interesting format for me as an instructor, but this online format is very, very welcome for a lot of people who, especially people that have young children or have to give care for other people in the household. Once they're asleep, then they can go listen to that. I had one student who carved out Saturday morning when the rest of the family slept in. That's when they got up, they listened to the lectures, they did the homework and turned it in on Saturday. So whatever works for you. Then you can get certificates for very short attendance types things, just going to a webinar. If you go to a webinar, you can get an hour's credit. So these are the continuing education hours, these professional development points, whatever the particular organization calls it. If you go to a webinar that's an hour long, you usually get credit for an hour. And then that translates into points or CEHs or whatever. Uh, they have workshops 1 day, 2 day, 3 day. And again, they don't have to be offered by the parent organization. So if you have an ISM certification, you get points for going to any workshop offered by anything that's related to business and or supply chain. So you could go to one on finances, if it was talking about reading balance sheets and those kinds of things, or accounting. If you took an accounting class, that would apply because it's still business related. Now, if you took a swimming class, that would not apply, but you get that for those workshops. The focus of certificates is often pretty narrow. It's not nearly as broad as the others. And you can say, oh, I have a certificate from UCLA that says I have this program, and that's great, and you should be proud of that. But the recognition of that from the rest of the community and from potential hiring managers, and unless your manager helped you get that, may be limited and may not be as esteemed as a full-on certification. So it depends on the perspective. It depends on the school. UCLA is a well-respected school. It is through the extension department, and that is not exactly the same as the full-time college, but that is a good thing to get. And these are often less expensive and easier to attain. And then we have full-on college degrees. So there's a lot of local universities here in the Los Angeles area. And we have them here where you could attend in person, and then any number that you can get online. So Cal State Northridge has a department in systems and operations management. They actually have a supply chain major within that department. Cal State Fullerton has a supply chain management department. Cal State Long Beach has operations and supply chain management, and they have majors in there related to supply chain. Cal State Los Angeles has a Center for Logistics and Supply Chain Management. USC has Logistics, Materials, and Supply Chain Management. Santa Monica College has a Global Trade and Logistics program. And UCLA has a lot of graduate programs specifically designed for supply chain. A couple other universities that are very well respected in the industry: Arizona State and Michigan State. So those are two very well respected and have been in this business for a long time. Many schools have just started to offer supply chain degrees. They didn't have that. For me, that was long after I got my degrees. So now they have that specialization. You can get that. So there's a lot of different types of degrees you can get. You can also use degrees for other backgrounds for business. So you can have general or specific business degrees that like accounting, finance, very specific, management, which is a more generalized business degree, economics, which is a different take on the business, but all of those things are good for supply chain. You can come with a background that's technical or science-based. My own background is in engineering. So my undergraduate degree is in engineering. I worked as an engineer for many years before I got into supply chain. It's industrial engineering, so I worked in production and operations, and that helped me with supply chain. You can also have technical degrees in systems and information technology. For those of us who've used any and many of these MRP and ERP systems, you need people with those kinds of backgrounds to be able to manipulate those systems and get some of the information out of those. So that helps to have people on your team and in your organization that have those kinds of backgrounds. If you're in a pharmaceutical, a medical, or a food company, a degree in biology or chemistry can come in really handy. So there's a lot of degrees for people that they study at one point in time, often when they're younger, and then they decide that I don't really want to be a chemist, but I can go be a commodity manager or a category manager for a company with my chemistry degree that will help me do that. There are majors and there are also minors in many of these universities. They let you pick different areas. You can take more classes in one specific concentration or another. And then they have what they call areas of concentration. So you can look at the different universities and see how they outline the different courses that you can take and how that relates to all of the other things that you're doing. So then there are different levels of degrees. You can get a bachelor's degree, you can get a master's degree, you can get a doctorate or a PhD. So you don't have to have any of these, but there are lots of different choices. You don't have to get them from the same school. You can get them in different things. For me personally, I have an engineering degree as a bachelor's degree, and I have a master's in business administration, which is a master's in business. So to compare these a little bit, certifications usually take 1 to 3 years to obtain, depending on how many exams, how many different courses. With the CSCMP, the level 1, 2, 3, ISM has 3 different exams, and then APICS has fairly long exams that you have to take, and it usually takes about a year to get, say, a CPIM. So some businesses will reimburse the cost, which is a great thing, and it's cheaper than for reimbursing you to go to a 4-year degree, but that's something you have to ask. So the focus should be on the material that's most related to the career path that you want to do. And as I said, these organizations have different focus. So if you're more in logistics, you might want to pursue the CSCMP one. If you're more in purchasing, you might want to look at the ISM. And if you're more in a production manufacturing environment and want to be able to do different things there, then an APICS certification can hold you in good stead. All of these are recognized validation of the training and the effort that it puts in to get those. You have to have a certain amount of knowledge that you gain, even if it's just for the 3 hours that you take the test. So some of it will dissipate, and hopefully a lot of it will stay with you because you learned it long enough to take a test and pass that test. These organizations are recognized globally, so those certifications will help you anywhere and everywhere, and people around the globe will acknowledge that you have that. The total cost of these is not inexpensive. The total cost is, I say, $2,000 and up, and many of these will cost more than $2,000 to attain. You don't have to lay that out all at one time, but there's different components of that. So there's study materials, and I strongly would urge anyone that's wanting to pursue this to look at the materials that they offer and make sure that you have adequate materials to study with. There are also courses that you can take. Some of these are lumped together. You get the materials with the course. Some of these have materials, extra materials that you can get to augment. You can take a course and then buy additional materials. Some of them are completely separate, that the materials are bought one place and then the course is offered somewhere else. And then you have the exams that you have to pay for. So I'll just give you a couple examples. APICS charges about $1,000 for the study materials, and it's $630 to take an exam with a membership. Without the memberships, it's $1,250 for materials and $795 to take the exam. So you can see that some of these are a lot. ISM materials are about $800 for members. It's $1,200 for non-members. That material will cover all 3 exams, but the exams are $230 each for members and $379 for non-members. So you have to look at the total cost and what the outlay is for that. It can vary quite a bit, and like I say, neither of those scenarios that I gave you with APICS or ISM includes any extra coaching, which is a good idea to get, or to get a study buddy, someone that you can study with. Because this material is, if you've been a practitioner for a while, you're going to know some of it, but some of it you're not. And it's good to have somebody else that can explain that can help you do the research for it, or that can spell you on that. So they're not inexpensive investments, but they do pay a lot. And we'll show you some of I'll show you some of the benefits in just a second. So the cost is not for the faint of heart. And the other thing is the exams typically are not, if you don't pass them, you don't get to take them over for free. So if you take an exam and don't pass it, you have to pay the full fee to take it again. There are some exceptions to that, but in general, it costs you. So you want to make sure you're ready. This is not something I would suggest that you go just, oh, take it and see how well you do. If you're pretty confident after you've looked at the material and say that, then okay. But if you haven't looked at the material, haven't studied, I really would say not to do that. The other thing about these is they all have very specific ways of crafting questions. So the first time I got my certification was in, I think it was 2008. And that was a long time after I got my master's degree, and I got my master's degree a long time after I got my undergraduate degree. So the whole idea of test taking scared the holy snot out of me. So I had to go back and learn to take a test in that area. So they give you some practice exams. They talk to you about the styles of questions and how to address those, but they are not typical questions. And there's usually 4 or 5 different types of questions within the exam. And as you saw, they are long exams, 3-4 hours long. So you want to make sure that you're prepared to sit that long to take that and go through all those questions. All these certifications have renewals. Not all of them have lifetime, but a couple of them do. So if you have to renew, it's between 2 and 5 years. You have to keep your studying up. You have to keep learning new things. You don't have to take more exams, but you do have to prove to these organizations that you are in a mode of continuing to learn about the profession and staying current with the profession. And the fees for renewal, they are not nearly as expensive. They vary from about $75 to about $150 for renewal. So if you're paying that every 5 years, it's not that bad, or even every 3 years, it's not that bad to pay the $150. The one thing I didn't put on the slides that I'm going to encourage you to do is, if you aren't active members of these organizations, pay the money to be the member before you go to buy the materials, take the courses, take the exams, because the discounts are very worthwhile to do that. So the exams for APICS, it's $630 with a membership. It's almost $800 without. So that's $170 that you would save with the membership, which would almost pay for 1 year's membership. For ISM, they're basically $230 a piece. So if you multiply that times 6, it's going to be $690. And then if you don't do that, it's $380. So that's almost $1,100. So that would easily pay for a couple years membership in ISM. So you're going to save some money to do that, and you're going to actually be part of the organization. There are a lot of people who don't belong to the organizations and have these certifications. I've never quite understood that, because if you go to the trouble to get the certification and you're still continuing to renew it every 3 years, it seems like you would want to be a member of the organization, even if you're not a very active locally member, because you get things like magazines that are either online or print. You get invited to different webinars. You get a lot of different information from those organizations that will help you maintain that certification. So again, not all of them have lifetime status, but that can always change over time. So degrees, again, 2-year degrees for associates, 4-year degrees for bachelors. Those are full-time. So if you're going to school part-time, a bachelor's degree can take you a long time. I've known people that spent almost 10 years working on a bachelor's degree. They were glad they did it. It was worthwhile, but it took almost 10 years going to school part-time. For an advanced degree, you can get those typically in 1 to 2 years full-time. I got mine in about 4.5 or even 5 years. I think it was almost 5 years that it took me to get my master's degree, because I was going to school and working full time. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. The cost for degrees varies all over the place, so I'm not even going to give you ranges for that. If you go to accredited schools, you can get student loans, and there are businesses will sometimes assist with that, and they will reimburse you. A lot of them you pay up front, and then they will reimburse you, so that you're only ever out the one semester, and they require certain grades. The other thing about this is you want to make sure you go to an accredited university. Many universities are not accredited, and that degree holds less sway with potential employers, with other peers and colleagues, if it's not an accredited university. So some of the online universities are not, and so you want to look at those and make sure, if you're going to make this investment, my suggestion is that you make it in an accredited university. College degrees give you a much broader range of topics in the coursework. So if you're going to be a supply chain major at CSUN, you have to take math and calculus, you have to take some history, you have to take some English. There's a lot of different things that you have to study in order to get that degree. Diplomas are typically recognized globally, so wherever you're going, whoever you're working with would recognize that. So those are important things to do, but consider that accreditation piece and the time it takes to get that. Certificates vary in recognition. So you could have a certificate for a workshop and somebody says, well, that's no big deal. It's one day workshop, you did this, good for you. You know, it's a good thing to do, but it doesn't have much sway. Certificates are really good augmentation to other types of training, whether it's degree programs or certification programs or whatever. Again, you can get these certificates that add to your renewal requirements for your certification. So those are good things to do. They're often complementary, and certificates often help you close gaps. If you don't have the knowledge that you need in a particular area, you can get a certificate in something different, again, from the certification, but that can help you to get some skills that you might need to apply that to your job right away. So they're good things to get. The benefits of any of these really are they can differentiate you from your peers and colleagues. So if you have an organization and some of you have certifications and some of you don't, then the certification people stand out. When you're hiring, looking for another job, that certification always puts you a little bit higher up in the pecking order for people to look at you. So it might not help you actually land the job, but it might help you get the interview that helps you land the job. So that is a good differentiation strategy. All of these paths support your personal career goals. So it's something you have to look at very much introspectively and say, what do I want? What's important to me? What do I want to do? It doesn't mean that you have to be a manager. It doesn't mean that you can't be a manager if you get any of these. You have to look and say, what is my personal career goals? What do I want to do? They help companies with their career development strategies and goals. When they're looking for filling out their organizations, companies also often put that certification, that CPM preferred. So that CPM can stand for a lot of things because a lot of the job descriptions and a lot of that have been written for a long time. And that doesn't mean that if you have a CPIM from APICS or the level 2 Pro SC from CSCMP that won't be included. You might have to explain that to an HR person. Hey, I don't have the CPM, but I have this, which is the equivalent from this other organization. And they can easily go online, validate that, verify that, and say, yes, this is a good thing to have. So that can help you, and that can help companies add the strength they need to their organizations. Most of these organizations do salaried surveys every year, and they will tell you that with their certification, you make more money than people that don't have that. That is, in general, true across the board. People with more education, people with more credentials make more money than people that don't. That doesn't happen on an individual basis, but in general, yes, that does appear to be the case. And that's because people that are interested in obtaining these kinds of things are interested in learning and looking outside the workplace for more knowledge and things that they can bring into the workplace, which makes them better workers, which gets them more money. I always say even experienced people can benefit from studying new concepts and getting these certifications. As I said earlier, I got my bachelor's degree in engineering. I worked in that for several years before I got into supply chain. After I started working in supply chain, I worked in that for a few years before I got any kind of certification. So I'm not 80 years old, but when I got those certifications, I wasn't in my 20s either. So these are good things to get because they help expand your network through getting these types of certifications, degrees. You're going to meet different people, new people. You're going to be able to add to your network. You're going to meet instructors that can help you. A lot of instructors are practitioners in this. Even at the university level, they're having more practitioners now, or they can connect you with more companies. It's going to expand your own personal horizons, which is always a good thing. You may be able to do more than you think you can. You have a good chance of finding interest in new and different areas, and it will help you gain confidence for what you do in your job. So these are good things to pursue. So it doesn't really matter where you are and what you have under your belt or what you don't have. I say no matter where you are in life, any and all of these certifications, degrees are attainable. I remember as a kid, my mother always read Dear Abby and Dear Ann Landers. And today my husband and I look at the Los Angeles Times every day, and we read the Dear Amy. And something Ann Landers said, or one of them said many years ago, was if you're worried about you're too old to do something, ask yourself, how old am I now? And then how long would it take to do that? So if you're 40 and something's going to take 5 years, okay, in 5 years, you're going to be 45. You're going to be 45 in 5 years if you don't do anything different. But do you want to be 45 with that degree, certification, with that skill, or do you just want to be 45? So even if it takes that long, who cares? I've seen always in June, you'll see, in May and June, you'll see some people who finally finished a degree program that they started a few years ago. I saw a woman this year was 84 years old and got her college degree. And I always just smile because what an accomplishment. And she did something, she finished something that she started. She's 84 years old, and she's 84 years old with a degree instead of 84 years old without it because she didn't take that step. So you can do any of these at all time in your life. The world is much smaller, but it's more complex than ever. Supply management is changing. If we've learned nothing from the pandemic, it's that supply chain is changing, has to change, will continue to change. Companies need talented people in these positions. And believe it or not, I don't care how many people lose their jobs, the very experienced and skilled, talented people are always in short supply. So these things help demonstrate that you have more versatility, more skills, more flexibility to your current and to potential employers. I always say any of these work. So think about what you want in your life and your career. Find your niche. Make sure that you're doing this for yourself as much as for anybody else. If your boss says you got to, in order to keep this job, you got to go get this certification, take this course, go work on your degree, whatever, you're going to do it, but you're not going to have your full self into it. When you do it for yourself, then you're really going to get the most out of it. So make sure it's what you want. And believe me, any small steps count as progress. So whether you take one exam, whether you buy a book, whether you start just going online and looking into the certification, all those things are progress, and they can lead you to have the degree, the certification, whatever it is that you want that you think will help you. Individual classes always help close gaps, but they don't necessarily give you the public recognition. I was an engineer. I was working as an engineer. I was working as an engineering manager, and I didn't think I needed to go back to school. I remember my last semester of college, I was so glad to be graduating. And after I took my last final, I was walking home to my apartment, and I thought, I never have to take another exam in my life. And I was so relieved. But you know what? A few years later, I was back in school taking more exams because I realized that I didn't have the skills that I needed to be a manager. I had good engineering skills, but now I had been promoted to a manager, and I thought, if I'm going to be able to help my boss and help my company, I need to get those business skills that I didn't get in school. So there I was back in school, working full time, going to get my master's degree. So you have to figure out which gaps you have and how you're going to close them. No one path works for everybody. You have to, there is no one size fits all. So what works for one person doesn't work. And you don't have to have all of this alphabet soup after your name either. I happen to have several things after my name. They're very important to me. I had a friend once who said, I'm going to put those on my business card and on my signature because I earned every one of them. And I know exactly how she feels. I have a CPSM, I have a CPSD, I have an MBA, and I have a Green Belt certification. So I earned all of those. I'm actually working on a Scrum certification now, and I'm thinking about going in for a risk certification. So there's other things that I want to do, I want to pursue because I'm interested in them, not because I need a bunch of letters after my name. It's because I want those to help myself, to help my business, to help my clients. One of the other things that I caution people on, or I encourage people on, is these things are not inexpensive. Always, always, always ask your employer for support or financial aid. Whatever they will contribute will help. The worst thing they can tell you is no. And if they tell you no, then you have to find another way to do it. But many, many times I've encouraged people to ask for support in obtaining a certification, taking a class, going to a workshop. And many times the employer is very happy to do that. They have budget. It's not a lot of money, and it's going to pay itself back to the company. So companies are willing to make that investment in good employees. Remember that continuous learning promotes your brain health. It makes your life a lot more interesting too. So that's what I have for, here's my strive to thrive for the week. I say you can learn new things at any time in your life if you're willing to be a beginner. If you actually learn to like being a beginner, the whole world opens up to you. This is from Barbara Scher, who died this last May. She was almost 85 years old. She was an author, speaker. She sold millions of books translated into many languages around the world. Some of the books that you might be familiar with are Wishcraft, How to Get What You Really Want, and another book called I Could Do Anything If Only I Knew What It Was. So she spent her life helping people learn new things, tapping into their passion, and manifesting good results. So next week, we're going to talk about building and maintaining supplier trust. For September, I haven't finished yet. I'm trying to get my topics solidified this week, so I'll share them with you next week. There's my website. You can sign up. You can always do a call with Jane and learn how Purple Link can help your business. And then I have online webinars for you or for anybody else who's interested. We're doing exam number 3 on Wednesdays at 6 to 7:30 p.m. And I'm doing exam number 1 prep during the day, 9:30 to 11 Pacific time. This was designed for some people on the East Coast who want to take this and don't have certified trainers in that area. So I said I would do that on their lunchtime, and that's what we're doing. So that's all I have for today.